AEW Dynasty was live on pay-per-view from Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, and I am here to run down the entire show. This is DerekJ Speaks, and overall, top to bottom, another very strong pay-per-view outing from AEW. Also, once again, another very long show. And it's hard to justify a show like this being as long as it was when there was only about 3 weeks worth of build to it. But with that said, when you go into these shows expecting them to be as long as they are, this was a very good show. Topped off with an incredible main event in what was billed as the devil versus the god of pro wrestling. MJF defended his AEW World Championship against Kenny Omega in a back and forth contest that turned out to be really, really great, which one could expect from MJF and Kenny Omega. They only had one singles match prior to this one, and that was on an episode of Collision way back in 2023. And I recall that being an incredible match. In fact, I believe it was within my top 10 of that year of one of my favorite matches of the year. So I knew this was going to be really special, and it was. It had a very slow start, but as they built things up, it started to really turn into a great match. A lot of big moves getting kicked out of, which is a staple not only in AEW, but pro wrestling these days in general. So not the biggest fan of that aspect of it, but it didn't detract too terribly from the overall match. I mean, of course, both men hit each other with their finishers. We had a Panama Sunrise. We had a whole bunch of V-triggers from Kenny Omega. We even got a kick out of the One-Winged Angel. Now, earlier, Kenny hit an Avalanche One-Winged Angel, but MJF managed to roll to the outside. But a little bit later after that, Kenny went for a V-trigger and MJF pulled the referee in the way, so that took him out. Meanwhile, MJF went to go grab the Dynamite diamond ring, tried to use it. Kenny ducked it, ended up hitting a proper One-Winged Angel, but no referee in sight. Omega has MJF pinned and covered for like a 15 count until finally a new referee runs out, goes for the cover, and it's only good for a 2 count. Thus, technically making MJF, I believe, the first man in AEW to kick out of the One-Winged Angel. But of course, Omega had a visual pin on MJF at that point. These two started slugging it out, spitting in each other's faces, throwing a bunch of punches and kicks and everything in between, until both men found themselves on the apron with a table down below on the floor that was set up way earlier on in the match. And as Kenny is attempting to hit MJF with a One-Winged Angel off the apron down through the table, the new referee was checking on the original referee in the ring, had his back turned, and MJF pulled the Dynamite diamond ring back out and clobbered Omega right in the midsection and hit him with a tombstone off of the apron down through the table, got him back in the ring, hit Omega with the heat seeker, and he got the win. And so MJF, through shenanigans, retains the world title. Now, no big cliffhanger ending, no big shocker or anything like that, no new debut, no return, no big cameo, nothing crazy like that. Just back and forth, really good match. MJF cheats to win like you would expect the heel to do, and that's really it. It was honestly a little refreshing coming off of the last pay-per-view where the main event had all the barbed wire and glass and light tubes and fire or not fire, explosions and stuff. This was just a straight wrestling match back and forth that was really good. And MJF still the champion. Have no issues with that whatsoever. It would have been cool to see Kenny get the championship victory in Canada. I suspect he might get that world title back someday, but didn't happen on this show, and I'm fine with that. MJF has been on a hell of a run. AEW has seen a bit of a ratings boost recently. Not anything near what they were doing 3-4 years ago or anything like that, but they have gotten a bit of a boost, and their shows generally are a little more favored by a lot of people, and the main event scene has been pretty good with so many big names all vying for a shot at the world title, and all of it while MJF is the champion. So it would have been crazy to take the belt off of him right now, and I don't suspect he's going to be losing that championship anytime soon, but especially not this week, because on this very same show, we had a match between Darby Allin and Andrade El Idolo. MJF paid off the Don Callis family to take out Darby Allin and prevent him from getting a shot at him or his championship. And so Andrade was the selected hired gun in this match to defeat Darby, because if Darby won his match, he would be the next in line for a shot at the world title. And after what was a pretty decent match, nothing too great, not really as great as the one that Andrade had with Bandito at Revolution, but still a good match and one of the best matches that Darby has been in quite a long time. And of course, he did a bunch of crazy things, looked like he was going to kill himself. At one point during the match, there was a cool spot where Andrade was out on the floor once again, posing with some woman in the front row in the crowd, taking a selfie with her. She kissed him on the cheek, and then he turns around, and out of nowhere, Darby just comes crashing down off of the top turnbuckle down to the floor and just hits a crazy dive onto Andrade. So I thought that was a cool spot. But in the end, Darby, withstood a lot of punishment from Andrade to basically eke out a win. Basically got like a cradle cover on Andrade, and he got the win. And after the match, Andrade shook his hand, raised his arm, so gave him a bit of an endorsement there. And Darby got the win and is officially the new number one contender. And in fact, we learned later on in the night during an interview with Renee Paquette that Darby will be on Dynamite this upcoming Wednesday. It's their spring breakthrough show, and it is going to be in Washington. I believe they said Seattle, or Everett. I think they said Seattle. I think Darby said Everett, but either way, they're going to be in Washington this week. And of course, that's Darby's home state, hometown, what have you. So he indicated that it would be a championship match this week. They didn't make that official. As I'm recording this, the post-show scrum might be taking place, so they might make it official during that. So it's possible this week we will be getting a world title match between Darby and MJF. I suspect that they might still run it back for a rematch at Double or Nothing in New York next month, but either way, that will be interesting to see if that comes to fruition. Also, this upcoming week on Dynamite, we're going to get a TBS championship match between Willow and Camille. She's alive. Camille made her return, not even on the pre-show, but it was on a YouTube video that got uploaded before the pre-show even started, the 0 hour. And it was a video backstage of Willow getting interviewed, and then Camille came out of nowhere and attacked her from behind. And then she had a squash match on the actual 0 hour, won. And then when Willow came back out to try to get some revenge, Camille beat her down again. And then Willow challenged her to face her for her TBS championship, so we're getting that match this week. I have no idea why Camille was gone for so long. I have no idea why they decided to bring her back now. But whatever. That's a match for this upcoming week. So that takes care of Dynamite. Let's get back into talking about this show because we had some really good matches on the show. I mentioned Andrade, of course, a member of the Don Callis family. Him shaking hands and endorsing Darby like that came off awfully babyface-like. And he's kind of been teasing that direction in recent weeks on TV, where he has not been a fan of being put in the position to basically be a hired gun for MJF. And I don't know if they're teasing a babyface turn for him, but he is not the only member of the Don Callis family to tease breaking away from the family, because the biggest tease of them all is Konosuke Takeshita. And we saw him in the opening match on this pay-per-view as he teamed up with the international champion, Kazuchika Okada, to take on the Young Bucks, a spot that apparently was going to be for Kyle Fletcher and Okada, but of course Kyle Fletcher unfortunately went down to a legit injury, which is why the TNT title was on the line in a gauntlet match later on the night. But for this match, of course, we know the history and the animosity between Takeshita and Okada, and that played a big pivotal role in this match. But overall, this was a fantastic match, and looking back on the show, this was one of the best matches of the entire night. One of my favorites, quite frankly. The Young Bucks, they're perfect in this spot in opening the show. Okada and Takeshita are both great, especially Takeshita. He is one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. Okada is not the Okada of old, but he still has it in him to be in great matches and do his thing. And of course, the stuff between him and Takeshita during the course of this match, at one point, they just came to blows. Like earlier in the match, they were seemingly getting along. They were tagging in and out. They were working together, doing double team moves and stuff like that. But then later on, they just started coming to blows and they just started exchanging forearms. They both accidentally hit each other with some moves that were intended for either Matt or Nick, but one of them would duck, and so Takeshita accidentally hit Okada with a running knee, and then Okada accidentally hit Takeshita with a Rainmaker clothesline. But then it all came crashing down in the end as the Young Bucks had Okada in position for a Meltzer driver. When on the floor, Takeshita was grabbing onto Nick Jackson's ankle as he was on the apron getting ready to execute the move, and everyone came to a standstill, and Takeshita took a look at the lay of the land here, and then he let go of Nick Jackson, and he took a step back and let the move take place. And so Nick Jackson came off the top rope, they hit Okada with the Meltzer driver, and they got the win. So a big win for the Young Bucks here, and this looked like quite the implosion for Takeshita. I don't know if this is going to directly lead to him officially leaving the Don Callis family. We know that's ultimately the direction, but Don Callis, who was out there on commentary, was not happy about this. And they made it very clear on the Go Home show before this pay-per-view that Don Callis agreed for Takeshita and Okada that if they do this match, then Takeshita can get a shot at Okada's international championship at Double or Nothing. So we'll see if that will still stand after what happened here in this finish. But this show, that tag team match was very, very good. A match that was not very, very good came up next between Ricochet and Jericho. Can't call him Chris anymore, but for the sake of this, it is Chris Jericho, who of course made his return to AEW a few weeks ago. And this past week on the Go Home show before this event, Jericho was out there, signed his new contract, got to pick his own opponent for this pay-per-view, and he picked Ricochet. So we got this match, and we had a lot of grandstanding in the very beginning. The crowd was going very bonkers for Chris Jericho. which is funny because Jericho's been on TV for a few weeks now, and they've been running a lot of shows in Canada. Some of the previous weeks, his reactions, not that great. Like, they've popped for him and applaud him, but they didn't go that crazy. Here on this show, they did go crazy for him, and that ate up a lot of time for the first several minutes of the match. So that added to how long this match went. It went far longer than it needed to. Like, good to see Jericho back. He's in great shape. I don't need to see Chris Jericho matches that are match number 2 on a card of 9 or 10 going 15 plus minutes, which this one did. And if it didn't, it definitely felt like it. You could have shaved a good 5 or 8 minutes off of this match and it probably would have been better. But it was still a decent match. It felt more TV quality than pay-per-view quality, but it was still a decent enough match. Jericho, he's slower these days. I mean, of course he is. He's older. But he did fine. Ricochet, played heel very well. And much to my shock, Ricochet actually got the win. Chris Jericho's first match in well over a year, and he goes out here, and Ricochet, while not a completely clean victory, as the Gates of Agony did interfere on the outside behind the referee's back at several points throughout the match, but Ricochet hit a shooting star press, only got a 2 count, so then he geared back, hit Jericho with a spirit gun, and then on the outside, the Gates of Agony are encouraging Ricochet to hit Jericho with his own move. And so Ricochet hits the Lion Salt on Chris Jericho and gets the 1-2-3. So Ricochet won. Very shocking to me. Jericho's first match back in over a year. They're in Canada. The crowd's going crazy for him. I thought this would have been a win for Jericho, but it was not. He put over Ricochet here. And it leads me to think that maybe this is the first match in a series of matches between these two. We know how these Jericho feuds in AEW can turn into sometimes, where they just drag it out far longer than it needs to. It's happened countless times with so many other people, and I suspect it might be something similar here. So I could see these two running it back at Double or Nothing in New York, which is Jericho's second hometown, and we'll see if Jericho gets a win there. I'm also curious to see how Jericho's reactions are going to be in the United States, because so far all of his appearances have took place in Canada, so we'll see if anything changes in the US. I don't think it will, but we'll see. We also had, I mentioned the Darby Andrade match. We also had, speaking of hometown people, or at least home country men on this show, the AEW World Tag Team Championships were on the line as FTR took on Christian Cage and Adam Copeland. This turned out to be a very good match, not quite as good as the opening tag team match, but it was very good in its own right. Copeland got busted open crazy during the course of this match. There was a spot where he got cracked in the head with one of the tag belts, and it got him clean in the face, because as soon, and they showed the slow-mo replay where as soon as it hit him and that he started falling backwards, the cut and the blood started to immediately rush out of his forehead. So they got him good there, or there was a piece of the belt that sliced him open. Either way, we got some Crimson Mask on this show. But Christian came into the show with an injured arm. It was injured at the hands of FTR, so that played a role here, and ultimately it took him out of the equation as he got beat down by, I believe it was Cash Wheeler, who took him out, tossed him over the timekeeper's area, and then it just came down 2-on-1 with FTR against Copeland. And while he fought valiantly, tried to stay in it, he could not withstand the 2-on-1 advantage. They took him out with a shatter machine and got the win. So speaking of shocking finishes on this show, this was probably the most shocking finish out of all of them. I did not expect FTR to win this match. But given the fact that in their previous encounter last year at All Out in Toronto, speaking of Canada, they had the big match in Toronto last year with Copeland Christian against FTR. Copeland Christian won that match. And then that's when FTR gave the package pile driver to Cope's wife, Beth, and took her out, put her on a stretcher. Cope was gone for several months to the point where I just really stopped caring about the feud because it was just so long since we had seen him or Christian that I just got to a point where I didn't care anymore. And then finally they came back at Revolution and they reignited this feud. It has not really been overly interesting to me, but after the finish of this match, it might continue. I don't know if we're going to immediately get a rematch or if Cope and Christian are going to have to work for it to get their way back to it. I suspect they want to give FTR a win here. They didn't want them to just lose 2 straight to the old guys. And it's fine that Cope and Christian didn't get their tag title victory in Canada here. They already got their big win in Toronto. Although I will say, based on the reaction of that finish from the live crowd and how they weren't as up and hyped up for the next couple of matches, it felt like this was a bit deflating for them. A lot of people, and I even saw it on my Twitter/X timeline, a lot of people were pretty upset that Cope and Christian didn't get the win here. But I think it might come at Double or Nothing in New York next month. So maybe they tack on a stipulation for it, and I think they'll get that victory there, and we will ultimately build up to either Cope and Christian versus the Young Bucks, or FTR will be included and they'll do a triple threat. But either way, at some point this summer, the big match to do will be Cope and Christian versus the Young Bucks. I think that's going to be the match at Wembley in August, but we'll see if they work FTR in there or if that's a different match. So we'll see. But I do suspect Cope and Christian will get their tag victory at Double or Nothing next month. I could be wrong, but that's what I think is going to happen. I mentioned the next couple of matches didn't really get a whole lot of love, but the fans were still into some of it, including up next, the Casino Gauntlet for the TNT Championship. Of course, as I mentioned, Kyle Fletcher, the TNT champion, injured, had to vacate the title, so he had a Casino Gauntlet match on this show. Not going to run through every single name that was in this match, but we did start out with Tommaso Ciampa and Rush, and then eventually we saw the likes of Bandito and some guys from the Death Riders like Pac and Wheeler Yuta and Daniel Garcia. We had El Clone in this match. Anthony Bowens was out there, and we had Jet Speed out there, both Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, which is important to point out because both men were involved in the finish of this match. As Speedball was mixing it up with Pac, he took Pac out of the equation. Then he started mixing it up with Daniel Garcia, who locked him in a submission, basically like a sharpshooter, and started to really wrench back on it to the point where Garcia was flat on his back in the ring. Meanwhile, at the same time, Kevin Knight goes to the top rope and comes crashing down with a UFO onto Daniel Garcia and effectively also taking out Speedball. And then Kevin Knight pins Garcia to win the match and become the new TNT champion. And I like that finish. I didn't see that coming either, but I really liked seeing that one there. Kevin Knight is one of the young stars in AEW, much like someone, funny enough, like a Kyle Fletcher, who is someone who's gotten a lot of focus from AEW. He's gotten some TV time. He's gotten to be in there with some big names like an MJF or Okada and people like that. And he's gotten a lot of TV time, whether it be on Dynamite or Collision, and be put in big matches. Of course, he was recently Trios champion with Speedball and Hangman, and then Speedball and Mystico. So seeing him get a win here and get singles gold was really cool. Now we'll see if they play off of that finish there with Kevin Knight getting the win. Meanwhile, Speedball was the one locked in the submission, so he kind of took advantage of that opportunity there. We'll see if that plays into anything. We've seen Speedball challenge for the TNT Championship a few times in the past against Kyle Fletcher. In fact, their two singles matches on TV in the last couple of months, their first match being in December around that time, and then they had another match in recent months. I think it was February or March this year. Both matches were excellent. Speedball lost both of them. I wonder if they might have tag team partners go up against each other in either a TV match or, again, Double or Nothing. We see Kevin Knight versus Speedball for the TNT Championship. I think that would be an amazing match. So I actually hope we do get it, on whether it's on TV or on pay-per-view. I think that would be a great match. But either way, good for Kevin Knight getting the win here. He had the AEW Women's World Championship on the line as Tekla defended against Jamie Hayter. This was one of the weaker matches of the show. The crowd was not as hyped up for this one as they were for a lot of the previous matches. There were spurts and different spots in the match where they started to come alive again and give a little respect to the women, but overall they just didn't fully get into it, and honestly neither did I. I mean, the two worked well. Jamie Hayter is very good and Tekla is amazing. You know, she recently re-signed with the company. She signed a new multi-year deal, easy for me to say, for more money, right in the middle of an already existing deal. So clearly Tony Khan and a lot of the higher-ups in AEW think very highly of Tekla, and it's well-deserved because she is great. She's a great personality, and she's great in the ring. It's just that this match, while fine, was nothing overly special, and the finish wasn't really the best either, as Tekla did get the win over Jamie Hayter, which was to be expected. I don't think anyone expected Jamie to win the championship here. Her other half of her team of the Brawling Birds, Alex Windsor, got a win over Marina Shafir on the 0 Hour pre-show, but Jamie Hayter failed to win here as Tekla rolled her up, and in the course of rolling her up and bridging over, she held on to the bottom rope, and the referee, who was right there, I don't know how he didn't see it, but he didn't see it. And then after the match, Alex Windsor ran out and she was arguing with the referee, talking about how she held on to the bottom rope, but that was it. So maybe this will set up Alex Windsor as the next challenger for that championship after this. I don't know, but the lineup of women for Tekla to work with over the next couple of months is not really standing out as obvious for me. I do suspect that Mercedes Moné will be back basically any week now, and we will start the build towards her going after that world championship. She has lost all of her gold all across the indies that she competed at. She's lost all of her belts, so I suspect she'll be back soon, and probably sooner rather than later, especially after Toni Storm was basically ruled out of any further competition for the rest of this year for unknown reasons, even though a lot of us do know the reason, but it hasn't officially been stated. So, gonna need a big name for the women's division going forward, and Mercedes could be that name, even as a babyface. So I think her versus Tekla will be the big match to build to. If they don't want to save it for Wembley, I could see them doing it sooner than that, but guess we'll just have to wait and see how that one turns out. The Continental Championship was on the line. Jon Moxley defending against Will Ospreay. I thought this was a really good match. This was very, very good. A few too many kickouts, of some big moves, especially some big moves on Ospreay that involved his neck and him landing on his surgically repaired neck. But it was his neck that proved to be his downfall in this match. But I thought the way it started out was really good. Both men are in the ring, the bell rings, and Ospreay immediately rushes over and knocks out Jon Moxley with a hidden blade, and then clocks him with another one and sends him to the floor. So I thought that was a great way to start. The fans were rabid for this one. They were going crazy for all of Ospreay's offense. They were groaning and hating on everything that Moxley was doing to him, especially when he was targeting his neck. And like I said, there were a few too many moves that were hit that looked like they probably should have finished off Ospreay, whether it was the Death Rider or a couple of paradigm shifts and other things like that. But we did get a very dramatic move later on down the stretch in the match as Moxley hit Ospreay with a pile driver on a set of steel steps. And that looked like it was going to be the end for Ospreay. He was out on the floor. He barely beat the count back in. He got hit with a stomp and then multiple paradigm shifts, but he kicked out. And I'm like, there's no fucking way this man just kicked out of all of that and he's going to come back and win. But he did not. That was basically like a quick burst of energy, but it was not sustainable as Moxley ended up hitting him with one final Death Rider and got the win. And Moxley retains the Continental Championship. This feud was not about the Continental title. The entire reason that Ospreay wanted the Continental Championship on the line was because under Continental rules, there is no outside interference allowed in these matches. So that was a way to keep the Death Riders from getting involved in this match. So even in storyline, I don't think Will Ospreay cared about the championship, and nor should he, because I see a much bigger path for Ospreay this year. I've been talking a lot about building towards All In at Wembley Stadium later in the year. That's right there. That show is the reason why MJF remaining champion is as important as it is in my eyes, because that's the big match to do for that show. Ospreay winning the Owen Hart Cup tournament and punching his ticket to All In at Wembley Stadium in England and winning the championship there. That's the big thing. He does not need the Continental Championship, so him losing this match, while not ideal that he loses his first big pay-per-view match after returning to Jon Moxley, who, quite frankly, he also does not need the Continental Championship. If we're being really honest, the Continental Championship itself does not need to exist, but that's a different story for a different day. But Ospreay does not need that belt, and it was not necessary for him to win it here. So I have no issue with Moxley winning. Plus, Ospreay beat Moxley the previous week. There was this big multi-man match where the Death Riders took on Ospreay and some of his United Empire mates from New Japan. They appeared on Dynamite and they got a big win there. So, and if they want to run this singles match back again, there's a way to do it where Ospreay does not have to win the Continental Championship and he can get his win back over Moxley. And that's if they do have both of these men in the Owen Hart Cup tournament and the finals comes down to Moxley and Ospreay. And Ospreay can get his win back there. That, or after Ospreay beats MJF, he gets through the tournament, gets, to the title and wins it. Maybe coming out of All In, one of his first challengers will be Jon Moxley. And they can play off the fact that in their previous encounter, Moxley beat him. And that's where Ospreay can get his win back there. So there's ways to do it in the future. But for now, Ospreay not winning the Continental Championship because he absolutely did not need to have the Continental Championship. And he's not hurt by this loss at all whatsoever. Ospreay wins plenty. It's fine for him to lose sometimes. A lot of these companies and these bookers these days are so afraid to beat their top stars and a lot of these fans look at a lot of these guys getting beat and automatically assume they're buried or whatever. It's fine. So he can easily recover from this. It's okay. And then we also had the AEW Trios titles. Speaking of recovering, good God, the dogs, David Finlay, Clark Connors, and Gabe Kidd. These guys just won the Trios titles the previous night on Collision. They had Collision. Of course, they taped it earlier in the week, but Collision aired on TNT the previous night, 24 hours earlier, and they beat Jet Speed and Mystico to win the Trios titles. And it was on that night where Roderick Strong and Orange Cassidy laid out the challenge for the Trios titles, and they would have a surprise partner who ended up being Kyle O'Reilly. And that was cool. He returned, was in his hometown, got a big ovation. Of all the things that the people were reacting to in this match, they were reacting to Kyle O'Reilly. So that was cool for him. With that said, this is once again one of those cases where AEW has a pay-per-view with several matches that did not need to be on said pay-per-view. And this match here definitely did not need to be on this show. And it's unfortunate that it took place on this show because one of the guys in this match ended up potentially getting hurt. As Gabe Kidd, I don't even really remember what happened to him. But at some point when there was this big melee with all these guys, Gabe Kidd went out to the floor. He was mixing it up with Kyle O'Reilly. And after that, he just wasn't a factor in this match anymore. And he got taken to the back. Now, I didn't see it. I'll be honest, I wasn't fully paying attention to this match because I just was not fully invested in this story. Haven't been, probably never will be. But Gabe Kidd got escorted to the back by referees and officials, and Dave Meltzer posted that he just posted just one single post, said possible separated shoulder. Now, he posted prior to that something about Gabe Kidd being escorted to the back, possibly being injured, but you would think both tweets would be kind of connected. They were not. They were two separate tweets. So some people only looked at the possible separated shoulder thing and they didn't see the previous one, so they didn't know who he was talking about. But I guess that's the fear backstage. Again, as I'm recording this, the post-show scrum is on, so maybe that'll get addressed. But Gabe Kidd got escorted out of this match, and I'm curious as to whether or not that impacted the finish. Because the finish saw Kyle O'Reilly tapping out Clark Connors in the ankle lock. And the conglomeration of Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, and Orange Cassidy won the Trios titles. The Dogs, who have been around for a very short period of time, have not really gotten over, have had a very bad feud with Darby Allin and Orange Cassidy and Roderick Strong for months now. They barely win. They finally win, and they win the Trios titles, and then 24 hours later, they lose them. Now, it's possible this was always going to happen, and they wanted to give Kyle O'Reilly a big win on his first night back, but I don't know. I'd like to think that maybe they were going to retain their belts, but because Gabe Kidd got taken out and is now possibly hurt with a potential separated shoulder, they rebooked this on the fly and decided to give the titles to the babyfaces. So it could be a happy moment here. Which is also good because had Kyle O'Reilly not won, it would have been a bad night overall for all these Canadian wrestlers. At least one of them got a big win on this show, and it was Kyle O'Reilly. So there you go. So overall, all in all, top to bottom, very good show from AEW. Some good, some not so good, some great stuff in there. And looking forward to seeing what they cook up for their next time on pay-per-view, which is Double or Nothing. I already gave you a bit of a layout of some of the things that I could expect to see on that show as we march very slowly towards the big show at the end of the summer and All In at Wembley. We'll see what stories and all this push forward into that show. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I thought this was very good and a nice palate cleanser to a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing from WWE recently, which I will be getting into this upcoming week because AEW had a little bit of a spotlight here, but now this week and probably even the week after that, all that spotlight will be gone as we are right at the end of the road to WrestleMania, which is crazy because this road has been not that great. But this upcoming week, I'll be back here with you guys to give a rundown of my predictions for the show. We have the full card for nights 1 and 2. Hopefully not fully complete. There's still one more match I'm really hoping gets added at the last minute. It's not looking too good, but we'll see. But this upcoming week, expect to see my predictions out for WrestleMania. And, of course, next Saturday and next Sunday, I will be reviewing both nights, respectively, of WrestleMania. And then that Monday, I'll be reviewing the post-WrestleMania edition of Raw. So, some big shows coming up there and a lot to talk about. Again, this has been a wild couple of weeks for WWE and their content. A lot of divisive opinions from people online, and we're going to get into all that this upcoming week. But here, we're signing off on the AEW show. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And I guess I'll see you guys later this week for WrestleMania coverage. Until then, check you later.